Welcome everyone to week 2, day 1. And today we're going to be continuing the material stuff and might do a little bit of math too as well. So before class started, I streamed a little bit of my daughter playing Rocksmith, and it's a great example. You can see a spare real tone cable down there. It's a great example of how games can be used for education. So you have a bass guitar hooked up via USB cable to a computer, and it can teach you to play the guitar or bass, which is pretty cool, in my opinion. Pretty cool indeed. All right. Like I said, you don't have to be a gamer to enjoy this class or to see the value of it. Pause this for a second. There. Random USB cables in the background are bothering me. All right. Okay. All right. So let's everybody please fire up the Unreal Engine. We're going to continue our discussion of materials today. Get into landscaping. Yeah. What's really funny is that guitars and things like that are actually pretty expensive these days. Like if you look for them on eBay, they're like $100 or $140 and up. They did make a version that had a Pro controller for the Guitar Hero or Rock Band or something like that actually allowed you to play a more accurate version of the guitar. And those are even more expensive. It's like, just, I don't know, to me, just like get a real guitar, you know. You can get an electric guitar for $200, you know, something like that. When is your mod assigned? As in, when should you know enough to mod a game? We cover that in week 3, so don't worry about it. Don't worry about it for now. Okay, so here we are in our world, and we're going to be talking about materials some more. Okay, so let's go into penguin material here. And so the first thing that I want to talk about is the ability to tile a texture more frequently or less frequently. So what does that mean? So if you apply a texture to like a wall, remember how it got all stretched out? It'd be really nice if you could, not have it all stretched, right? And so textures have these things called UVs, which are UV coordinates, which is kind of like X and Y on a graph. You know, like when you take algebra, there's X and Y. U and V are basically used in the world of textures to kind of do the same thing, to kind of show where you are on a triangle. And if we pull out from that, we should be able to do a texture coordinate, text chord, like that. So search for texture coordinate, pull out from the UV node, and we'll probably connect this up to all these things. They all tile the same amount. And we save that. You'll see over here there's U tiling and V tiling. And yeah, like week 3, Shami, you'll know enough to mod again. So here you can see there's U tiling and V tiling, and if you change this number, you'll see that the frequency of the bricks goes up, right? And you can change the vertical tiling and the horizontal tiling separately from each other. So if we increase the tiling on this to, I don't know, 7.5, something like that. Hit save. Put this on a wall here. You can see that the thing isn't nearly as badly stretched out as it was before. I make this 15, and this maybe 2. Save that. You can see that you can make the bricks even smaller, right? Whereas before, let me set it back. If you see these little yellow undo buttons, that will always turn a parameter back to what the original was. So no matter how many changes you made, yeah, this is what it would look like by default, right? Which just looks hideous, right? So you can put this up to 20 and 3 maybe, and you can see now that the wall looks like it looks reasonable, whereas before it was just like really, really stretchy. Okay. So the trouble is though, like if I were to apply this material now to a little brick, you can see the thing is like super tiled, and it doesn't look good now on a small object, right? So there is a way. There's a way to make your textures dynamic, so that you can have the same texture, but you don't, like right now, you can't use it on big objects and small objects, right? What would be really nice is if you could use the same texture on both of them and just have like some like a little slider or something that you can use to change how tiled the texture is. And there is most definitely a way to do that. Let's see here. Let me actually show you what this can look like. This is one of the reasons why I keep my old folders. So I'm going to show you what like kind of the end product looks like. So you can see it's not just for like changing the tiling on a texture, but there's a lot of things that you can set to be dynamic, and there's some really cool stuff you can do with it. Loading 95%. Loading 95%. So did you guys all see that step though? Like it's a text cord node, and then you hook up the text cord to the UV pins, and takes forever to load. So the process you want to go through if you want to change the tiling is use a text cord node. You hook those up to the UVs, and I made sure to hook them up to the UVs on all the texture samples, so that the normal map, which controls how light reflects off it and things like that, all of them tile at the same rate. Otherwise you get these really weird things where like the light reflects off not where the bricks are and things like that. Okay, so here is my fall 2020 thing, and it's kind of a cool look, huh? Alright, so if I hit play, scored a point. So, so this material I created here is actually the same as this material here. See that? Ada actually picked out the color for this. Ada, you remember when you picked the color for this?
Why did you put the rust on it?
Well, yeah, that's kind of cool.
Can you take the rust off?
Can I take the rust off, please? Okay. Let's see.
Can you take it off?
You're gonna make the thing not rusted.
That looks terrible.
Looks terrible. All right. How about that? Is that better?
Looks too green from before.
It's more green than before. These are all the same material, by the way. So, material instance, material instance. It's kind of cool looking. Okay. So. Since this is the original, I guess. Okay, so here we have the material that I created, and if you look at it, it's basically what we did there. I added a clear coat effect to it. If you guys know clear coat on like a car, it's like when you have a very thin layer on top of your paint on your car, and so if you look at it really closely, you can see there's like two different areas that are reflecting light. I don't know if it's really going to show up too much, but so we got here black. Okay, so basically we've got some noise, and that's what creates that rust effect. So what I'm doing is I have a texture full of noise, and I'm multiplying it by how strong the noise is going to be, and I'll show you guys how to do that in a second. And the texture coordinates are being multiplied by a parameter which is going to control the density of the noise. And we do need to talk about lerping. And so basically any areas that are white here are going to get like this a black rusty look added to it, and that's a parameter as well, I believe, right? I know it's a constant. Okay. And then texture skill. Okay. And then yeah, it's lerping between. Yeah, there you go. Okay. How do you get a completely shiny color like super polished metal? So if you turn metallic onto 1, then it turns into metal. And then down here, if you don't have anything selected on your material, you can turn the shading model onto clear coat, and that'll give it like I said on a car, when you have like a layer of wax on top of it, there's like an outer layer that reflects light and an inner layer that reflects light. It looks really nice. So you turn that over to clear coat. They have other presets for like skin and hair and some other stuff. Clear coat looks pretty nice for this though. And so the clear coat that I've got set on it is this like royal blue color. If I were to change the clear coat to like red or something, you'll see, do you see how there's like this like pinkish tinge on it now? So it's like if you have a pink colored wax on top of it. And so it's kind of a cool effect. Where you've got the base color of the material, and then you've got like this little very light, let's save that, I guess. two Unreal Engine instances of them. And so you can see how there's like kind of a pink tinge. It's like kind of a pink tinge on it now due to the wax layer. That back on royal blue. Yeah, you can barely see it, it's there. Yeah. Clear coat is just like a really subtle effect, but it's nice. Okay, so we do need to talk about lerping. Okay, so what? Okay, so what's the best way of going about explaining this? It's got I think specular doesn't matter because it's set to be metallic. I don't think that makes any difference. Yeah. Okay. What's the best way of walking you through this? Okay. So here we have our penguin material, okay? And let's say that we want to make it so that we can have different versions of the same material with different amounts of tiling, like how big the bricks are. Does that make sense to you guys? Like, are you guys with me? So like we could have one material where we've got, all of our stuff set up for the bricks, but then if we put on a big stretch out wall, we could kind of like adjust the tiling so that the bricks get smaller. And are you guys with me? Like, so that we don't have to keep making new materials every time. Like, we just like kind of adjust the things. Okay. Yeah. Well, and not exactly automatic, but yeah, like you could sort of manually adjust how big the bricks are. Okay. So what we're going to do is we are going to take the tiling values here. I'm just going to put them back to 1 by default. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the results of these into a multiply. Caps lock on, okay. I'm going to run the results. I'm going to run this texture coordinate through a multiply node. And then the results of this are going to come into all the UV coordinates. That. And that. Okay. And what number am I going to multiply it by? Well, that is the magic. That is the magic thing here. We're going to do what's called a scalar parameter. So a parameter, texture scaling. A parameter is something that you can actually adjust after the material's already been made. Okay. And so if we have a texture scaling parameter, then this number is 0, I think, right now. So after we create the parameter, we are going to set its default value to 1. And I'll give it a minimum value of 0.1 and a maximum value of 40 or something like that. I don't want it to go too high. All right, so once again, what I did was I took a texture coordinate node, which I set the tiling values to 1 by default, and I'm going to multiply it by default by 1. Okay, so I ran the pin from the texture coordinate node into a multiply node, and then I'm multiplying it by a parameter, a scalar parameter. And a parameter means that you, outside of this whole thing, can actually drag a little slider around and you'll see the bricks get bigger and smaller as you adjust this parameter. And so with the parameter selected, over on the left-hand side here, I'm going to give it a default value of 1, which means by default it does absolutely nothing. We just have the same original brick texture that we had before. And there will, however, be a slider, and the slider goes from minimum of 0.1. Why not 0? A tiling of 0 means that the thing doesn't exist, essentially, right? It won't draw any bricks at all if it's set to 0. It'll just be a giant blur. So the minimum is 0.1, and the maximum, I just picked it 40. You can always adjust these later if you find that you need really big values or something like that. And I named it texture scaling because when you see the slider, it's going to have a little thing on there called texture scaling now. Okay. Where do you find texture scaling? I typed it. In order to get that to appear, you create a scalar parameter. So in order to make this node appear, you create a scalar parameter, and then I renamed it to be texture scaling right here. Okay. Make sense to you guys? Guess we don't need you anymore. This would be super useful for changing levels in NPCs. They would adjust other stats accordingly. You can also have the colors be a parameter too. So last time Bazookian was like, can you do some paint on it? And so what I did is I took a noise and I multiplied the noise by blue and then added the blue to the brick. So it has little blue splatters on it. You can set the color of the paint to be a parameter as well. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this color here. This was a constant 3, right? Do you remember that? How we would be like a constant 3 vector to make a color. Instead of a constant 3, we're going to do a vector parameter like that, vector parameter. And we're going to call this paint splatter color. Move these guys out of the way a little bit. And it's going to default to blue like before, but it's going to default to blue like before. I know some of you guys saw that bug happen to you, where like you do a color picker and you hit OK and then it doesn't do anything. Default value, let's try it down here. Nope. So, well done. If you change it manually, then it'll change. Yeah, sometimes the color picker just doesn't work, and I don't really know why. So what we have now is exactly the same as before, except I changed this from being a constant 3 vector. A constant means it doesn't change, right? It's constant. I changed it from being a constant to a parameter. And so a parameter means that outside of this whole material editor thing, I'll be able to adjust the color of the paint dynamically, which is pretty cool. And what else could I turn into a parameter? This 0.25 here. Yeah. So I'm going to delete this 0.25. This is a constant. I'm going to change it to be a scalar parameter. There we go. And this will be called, this is the multiplication of the noise. So it's kind of the splatter strength. And again, I kind of need a different texture for this. But. So if we, and splatter strength should default to be 0.25, minimum value of 0, maximum value of 2, I guess. So we'll be able to drag up and down, and we'll get more paint splatter or less paint splatter. You got a volleyball now, Shammy. So make sure your texture coordinates are feeding into the UV for all 4 of the texture samples you have. I wonder if you did something weird. Okay. So what we've done today to recap is we first added a texture coordinate node that allows us to change the scaling of the textures. We then added in parameters, and I haven't shown you yet how the parameters actually work. We're just getting there. These could also be parameters too. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these bad boys here. And I'm going to promote metallic to be a parameter. So there's a faster way of doing this, by the way. You can actually right-click on a pin and choose promote to parameter. And it'll actually create a parameter with a name in it. So it'll just be called metallic. Specular I'll just leave as this texture sample here. Roughness, promote to parameter. And that's fine. Let's see if there's anything else we need to do on this. That's pretty good, I think. Oops. Yeah, looks fine. Okay, so if you want any of these things to be parameters, you can just right-click and choose Promote to Parameter, and it creates a parameter for you, gives it the name, and links it up to the pin for you. It's a little bit faster. Okay, so we can now turn the metallic value on and off, and we can turn the roughness up and down. Metallic should default to 0. The max should be 1, and then roughness will default to 0.25. And the min is 0, the max is 1. Okay. Let's see. Is there anything else we need to mess with? I think that's fine for now. So before I move on, is there any questions about what I did? I kind of did like 5 or 6 different things. So step 1, texture coordinate node multiplied by the texture scaling parameter. And then this thing over here that I did for Bazookian last time, which adds like a blue paint splatter to the bricks. I switched out basically all these different things with parameters instead of constants. So the color is now a parameter, so we'll be able to pick the color in real time. The splatter strength is a parameter, so we'll be able to drag how much paint appears on the bricks up and down. We could probably have a different texture tiling for the paint samples. So maybe I'll do that. Control W. And so this one will be not texture scaling, this will be paint. Yeah, paint texture scaling. And so we'll be able to have the paint be higher frequency or lower frequency, separate from the brick texture. So what I did was I selected the 3 things, hit Control W to duplicate it, and then made sure that I changed the name. All the parameter names have to be different, or bad things will happen. All right, so I'm going to save this. And I'll just close that for now. And so if you look at the penguin thing, you can see it's quite blue. It's picking up quite a lot of splatter actually right now on it. That thing's all stretched to hell because I set the scaling back to 1, right? Let's see. Why is it so blue? It shouldn't be quite so blue right now. Roughness. I think the roughness maybe should default to be a little bit higher. It's a brick. 0.6 maybe. And multiply. 1. Texture coordinate. Splatter strength. Awfully blue right now. Maybe I'll have it default to like 0.1 or something. I'll just have it default to off. It was a little bit too blue for my tastes. Okay, so we've got a good default brick texture, and you can see how it's kind of simulating the depth of the bricks here. So unless you look at it right from the side, if you look at it right from the side, you'll see there's actually no depth whatsoever. Like it's all simulated, but as long as you don't look too hard at it, it looks decently good. And then over here it looks horrible because it's all stretched to hell. Okay, so now that we've got this thing, here is the crucial step. And the crucial step is to right-click and choose Create Material Instance. So after you've made step 1, you make a material, and with the material, rather than using constants, you use parameters wherever you want it to change. If you don't want it to change, leave it as a constant. But anything that you want to be able to change later on, you make it as a parameter instead of a constant. Why does the paint look like it's not dark enough? It looks like watercolors. Yeah, we'll play with it once we create a material instance. So then you take your material, right-click, and choose Create Material Instance, and this one will be called, I don't know, Big Wall. Big Wall Energy. and then I'm going to drag that over the wall here, and you'll notice nothing changed. That's because we haven't changed anything yet. Okay. So what I did was I right-clicked on my material, I chose Create Material Instance, made a new material. It's not actually a new material, it's actually the old material, but now those parameters can be edited. And then I dragged Big Wall Energy over the wall here. And when I double-click it, you'll see that these parameters, all the parameters that we created in the material, appear here now. And so I can come down here and change texture scaling, for example. So if I click here and choose texture scaling, I can drag the texture scaling up like this, or down like that. And you can see in real time, I don't have to recompile the texture every time. Hit save, make a new one, that kind of stuff. I can actually drag the texture scaling around like that. And
that's a nice bush.
You like the bush? Mm-hmm. And then if I want to change its metallicness, I can set it up to 1 metallic. You notice that in real time, this thing turns into a metal brick. And if I put it back to 0, it turns into non-metal. It's not really scaling good enough. Yeah, we really need to have separate scaling parameters for the U and the V separately right now. Right now I just used one texture scaling parameter. If we want to add the paint splatter to it, then we can drag that up, and you can see it starts getting more and more blue as we add paint splatter to it. You see how it's like really, the paint splatter is really kind of bad looking. Well, that one we can also turn up the texture scaling for the paint splatter, and you can see that as I turn that up, the little dots become smaller. Okay, but the paint splatter is really strong, so I can turn that down. And we really need a better noise texture for that. You can see that I can just sit here and play with these values and kind of like blend in more paint on top of it, less paint, whatever effect I'm going for. What I really need is a texture that looks like paint splats. Maybe I can find that real fast. Because the one we have right now is just noise, which isn't exactly the right thing. Yeah, the noise is just never going to look exactly what we want here. We need these to be Creative Commons. Let's see if we can find one specifically for gaming. That's probably the closest to what we're looking for. It's not going to tile very well, but okay, so save image. There. Yes, Carl.
Dad, I found a secret passage that we can make this level easier. We've already passed this level.
Yeah? What game are you playing right now?
Mario.
Gotcha.
Mario.
So we'll save that. And then before I go on, let me show you this. So I can create another material instance, right click, create material instance. And this guy will call this small box. And I'll put small box on the small box here, double click. And small box I could have be metallic, let's say. And I could add maybe it's the color. Let's try this. We'll set color to be 0.2. Still just doesn't look very good. You see what I can do here? I can just sit here and drag these things around. So before, like when you're making material, you have to sit there and you have to like come up with some numbers and hit save and look to see if it looks good. Once you've made them into parameters, you can kind of just sit there and drag them around and see, see if you like it. That's not bad. It's not a bad look. Okay, so so here we have this texture, which is a metal box with some like dirt on it, basically. And then over here we've got the same material basically, but it's scaled completely differently. It's got different amounts of paint, different color paint on it, and things like that. So, so by making one master material, you can actually have many instances of it that are different colors, that are different tiling levels, that are metal or not metal. I can come over to this guy here and make him purple, let's say, and really up the purple on it. That, and so this texture and this texture are the same. This is a totally different parameter set. Okay, you guys with me on this? So I'm going to import. Let's just drag it in, I guess. Okay, so I saved that splatter texture, and I just dragged it from my desktop onto here. You see it appears, and then let's try doing this. It's a bit confusing. Yeah, there's a couple different things that I went over all at the same time, but let's see here, splatter. Okay. So I changed it out with, I changed the texture out. This, and there you go. So like, yeah, all right, cool. It's backwards. Because white is black and black is white. So if we go into small box here, like if I make this red, right? The splatter is the opposite, right? Because white. So it's not exactly what we want. So we need to come in here and change that to be the inverse. See here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to invert the black and white. So all these numbers go from 0 to 1, right? So if I subtract 1 minus, white is 1, right? So if I say 1 minus white, you get black. And if you take black, which is 0, and say 1 minus black, you get 1, which is white. So this should reverse the paint splatter effect, and there we go. Okay. So we can now add different blotches of paint to the oh yeah, Walker's on top of it. Alright, so there we go. And then you can see over here the scaling on it is all screwed up. So we're going to come down here and do paint texture scaling. We can drag this up, and again you can see that it's distorted because we're not doing separate U and V scaling here. But that's the general idea. So you can have different colored paints splotching the different objects and things like that. So yeah, materials are really fun to play with. There's a lot of really interesting things you can do with materials, and the basic tools are these. I know I promised you I'd get into lerping, so I'll talk about lerping in a second. But let's talk about add, subtract, and multiply. So all numbers in Unreal Engine go from 0 to 1, and so if I take this black and white image and do a 1 minus the color here, what it's doing essentially, if I click here, I can probably preview it. Let's see, can I preview this? Preview node. You can see that it creates the inverse of the image. Because black is 0, 1 minus 0 is 1, which is white, and so by doing that, it inverted the black and the white effect. And then I'm multiplying this result here with splatter strength. Splatter strength, right now it defaults to 0. I'll set it to like 0.25, I guess. And then you can right click and choose preview, like that. And you can see that 0.25 didn't dim it very much. So. If we set it to 0, we just get black coming out of it. 0.1, 0.5. Yeah, okay. So it is adjusting the output colors here. Okay, so we end up with a white to white or black image coming out of this, and then we're multiplying that by blue. And so it just takes blue, pure blue, blue 1, multiplying it. Anytime blue gets multiplied by black, you get black, because black is 0. Anytime you multiply blue by white, you get blue, because white is 1. And if you have something in between, like 0.5, then you get half blue, like a darker blue. Okay. And so if you preview the results of this, right-click on it, choose Preview Node, you'll see all those blotches turn blue. And so whenever you're building a material, it's really useful to just like right-click on the results of a pin, and then you can kind of see what is happening every step along the way. And so multiplying blue times white, you get blue. Multiplying blue times black, you get black. And grayscale is in between. And so this creates a nice blue paint splatter. This is a parameter, and because it's a parameter, when you create a material instance, you can change the color dynamically, and in the world you'll see the paint splotches change color as you pick different colors on the color picker. Also comment things. Who reads comments? Okay. And then when you add things together, so we've got this paint splotch here. When we add the paint splotch to the texture of a brick, here's what the brick looks like by default. When we add a paint splotch to a brick, then you get a paint splotch on the brick, right? So you have to, again, play with the tiling values and things like that to get them to work right. Okay. Then we've got our parameter for metallic here, which allows you to, in the material instance, you can turn metallic on and off. You can turn roughness up and down. these texture samples we can make into a parameter as well. So if you want to make it not always a brick, or if you want to be able to change out the splotch pattern, you can make those parameters as well and dynamically swap out the textures. I'm not going to do that, but it's called a texture parameter. And so you can, when you have your material instance open, you can actually have the same material actually have completely different material, like completely different textures inside of it and stuff like that. So it's actually fairly common for people to build like one master material that allows you to switch out literally everything, and then just have everything be a material instance of that, because then you actually don't need to recompile shaders for each of the different materials. It's just one material, and it can actually speed up like your loading time and things like that as well. You also don't have to go through this process of making materials every time. You just have one master material that you just switch out the everything. You can switch out anything using a material instance. Okay, so a LERP is kind of a cool word. LERP. 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 LERP stands for linear interpolation. And what's useful with landscape materials, Walker? Master materials, yeah. Yeah. I don't know if we'll get to landscapes today. Maybe. Okay. I want to talk about lerping though. So you guys all know what lerping is, right? You get a foam weapon and you go out there and you like hit your friends, saying magic missile, magic missile. No, nobody's done lerping before. LARPing, fine. So lerping is completely different. Okay. So LERP stands for linear interpolation. I think if you hold down L and click, yeah, if you hold down L and click, that's how common lerping is. Anything that you see a hotkey for, over on the right hand side here, you see how you can hold down 1 to get a constant, 2 to get a constant 2 vector. Anything that there's a hotkey for, there's probably a good reason that it's hotkeyed. Because there's a lot of things you can do in materials. A for add, D for divide, L for linear interpolate, which is LERP. Okay. M for multiply. Yeah. So there's a lot of things you can do in a there's a lot of things you can do in a texture, in a material, and only a few of them have hotkeys, and the ones that are hotkeys, the ones that have hotkeys are important. Okay. Yeah. L and left click gets a LERP node. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you can use lerping to blend between two different things. So if you've let's say we want to have let's say we want, rather than I don't want to do this. Rather than having one brick pattern, we can actually have different textures. The trouble is we've got these 3 things set up here. Yeah, whatever. Let's do it. Control W, create a whole nother set of these things. So Control W, I just duplicated the texture, the normal map, and the other thing, the bright green thing. And I'm going to actually switch out the texture here for, I don't know, something radically different just so you guys can see what it looks like. I'm going to switch it out with oak. Does oak not have a... Oak has a normal map there. Okay, so let's say that I want part of my material to be brick and part of it to be oak. And I can't think of a circumstance where I normally do this, but I'm doing this just so you can see dramatically, you know, how the process works. So let's say I want some regions to be oak and some regions to be brick. More commonly, you do this if you want to like add dirt on top of something, like I did in the other instance over here. There's a dirt layer on top of the clear coat. And let's see, Kearney Mat Material Instance. And so you see how like I'm adding dirt on top of that? It's pretty cool. Huh? And I'm changing the scaling parameter on it. Okay. Can make it stronger or weaker. So you can make it more oxidized or less oxidized in real time. Okay. And then I can add it. I can affect the how pitted it is also. And so this is really nice when like you're editing a level. You don't have to sit there and compile and retry things. You can just sit there and mess with the parameters until you get something that you like. Okay. Anyhow, yeah, I guess. Did I break it? Oh, okay. Okay. So. So you can blend different textures on top of each other and things like that. Now in the case of adding, it just literally adds all the pixel values of the blue on top of the brick. But let's say you want it to blend rather than adding, because you don't want, like if I added the oak on top of the brick, it would just be oak brick, which would look terrible, right? I don't know if you guys want to see that, but hey, do you want to see what oak brick looks like? I don't know either, bro. If we just add these things together, it's going to look pretty hideous, I think. So if we take the RGB of the oak out and add the result to the brick, then you see on here how it's both brick and oak at the same time. So it looks really bad, right? And then you got the paint splatter on top of that, like, you know, nobody's going to pay you for this texture, you know what I mean? Kind of want to see what it looks like, though. So there you go, so it's oak brick.
I think someone actually might pay for it in case, like, they want to make, like, a city and, like, put in graffiti or something.
It looks so hideous. Alright, big wall. There we go. Alright, so the texture scaling on this looks pretty garbage. Just make it white paint, maybe. And so, yeah, that's what happens when you add together oak and brick. You get oak brick. So, broke. It's different. I mean, I'll give you that. But in what would be a lot more useful is if we could have some areas of the texture that were oak and some areas that were brick. Okay, and so we're going to do that using what's called a LERP node. So hold down L, click, and we are going to LERP between oak and brick. And then this alpha parameter here is what controls. For every pixel, it's going to decide, am I going to be oak? Am I going to be brick? Am I going to be both? And the alpha parameter controls which one it picks. Okay, and it defaults to what, 0.5? Yeah, 0.5. No, I don't know. So I guess it blends by default 50-50. I'm going to pull this out, and I'm going to hook up another texture. Maybe I'll use a parameter for this one. That could be fun. And this is the LERP texture. And let's see if I can find a checkerboard or something. Let's see. And I'm going to pull out just the red channel from this. So the red channel is going to give me just the red pixels, and if I right click and preview this, there's a little bit of noise in there. It's not exactly what I want.
What is that?
It's a checkerboard pattern.
It doesn't look very good.
I actually just want a solid checkerboard with no noise on it. Maybe we can use this one.
That's a weird checkerboard pattern. It's not pretty checkerboard.
We view just the red channel. Oh, the red channel is just the lines. Okay. The green channel is that. The blue channel is checkerboards. Okay, that's what I was looking for. Okay. So if we pull the blue out here, then you'll see that we get a checkerboard pattern of some oak and some brick. Okay. Because what's coming out of the blue pin here, like I just showed you a second ago, it's showing the whole thing. That's kind of annoying. Is double click on this again. So I've got this checkerboard pattern here, and you can actually either use the whole thing or you can use individual channels from it. And see, the alpha is all white. Okay. So if I were to just use the red channel out of that, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get these little thin streaks of oak between the bricks, which kind of looks cool. You have like an oak liner between the bricks. If I use the green channel, then I would have a pattern that looks like this, just kind of an irregular pattern of oak versus brick. And the reason why it's doing that is because when the alpha is 1, it draws oak, or maybe I have it the other way around, it doesn't really matter. When you have a 1 on a LERP, it'll draw oak. When you have a black, it'll draw the brick. And so this pattern here is controlling where the oak is going to appear and where the brick is going to appear. And right now I'm using the blue channel, which is just a regular checkerboard pattern. And if I were to come out and save this, you'll see that there's now this checkerboard pattern of areas that are oak and areas that are brick. And both of them have the paint splotches on them in the usual manner down here. So you can see, kind of looks cool. Yeah. And if I were to use a different channel, oops. Or to use a different channel, like if I was to use the green channel, so the blue channel, or the green channel is like an irregular checkerboard pattern, then you'll see it's not that sort of predictable checkerboard now. It's sort of random. Maybe you want, maybe you don't. And if I were to use the red channel, then the red channel is just the lines, right? So you can see that in between the bricks there, we got a little ribbon of oak, which is kind of a cool effect. Right. What do you guys think? So lerping means use one or the other, right? And so whenever you get I'll put it back on the checkerboard pattern here. Whenever you have a white, then it picks the first thing. Whenever you have a black, it picks the second thing. And if it's a gray, which in this case we don't have any grays, but if we had a gray, then it would blend between the two of them, and we get that brick oak pattern again. So. So if we were to use a different texture here, like Perlin noise. So if we were to use Perlin noise, where it's kind of a mix of whites and grays and blacks, then you can see there's going to be areas where there's more oak, there's areas where there's more brick. They sort of blend nicely into one another. This is very common if you're doing like nature stuff. Nature very rarely has hard edges, right? So if you're making a landscape that's got dirt and rock and grass in it, we'll typically lerp between the boundaries of it. So you'll have the grass and the rock kind of flowing nicely into each other. For something like this, it makes absolutely no sense for brick and oak to blend into each other like this. Like for man-made stuff, you wouldn't do this. The checkerboard pattern, I guess, is more suitable. Okay. Any questions about this? Any comments? So by using a lerp, you can mix different things together, blend different things together. Can't think of any questions right now. All right, and I'll put this back onto clouds. Yeah, this would look pretty good, I think, with natural stuff, but for man-made brick, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So I'm going to put it back onto checkerboard. Now, what was it called? Control Z, Control Z, Control Z. There we go. Okay. Okay. And so there we've got a little bit more advanced materials. How did you get the text cord? It's not really penguin material anymore, is it? So in order to get a texture coordinate to appear, you right-click and type in. It's kind of annoying, but like if you type in text chord, I guess it does appear. But the name of the node is not actually text chord. The name of the node is actually texture coordinate, and yeah. So if you're trying to find something named text chord here, it doesn't exist. You have to type in texture coordinate, and then you get this thing to appear. And this allows you to control the scaling of the textures, and you basically feed a text chord node into the UV input, and that controls how big or how small the texture is. And if you wanted it to make it a parameter, you can't do it directly, unfortunately. You have to get a scaling parameter here and multiply it by the scaling, and then that allows you to adjust the texture scale on the fly. Still not popping up. Right click, texture coordinate. Are you in the materials editor, Simmons? If you drag out from the UV node, or if on the right hand side here, you might be able to find the texture coordinate over here as well. Did you get it? Okay, so your homework assignment for today is this. Yep. So you have to make a new material. You have to use the color, the metal, the specular, the roughness, normal map, and ambient occlusion. Ambient occlusion is used for self-shadowing. I think that would do it just fine. So that the bricks cast shadows on the other bricks. So yeah, so basically those things need to be set. Sometimes Unreal Engine can be annoying. It'll filter the results based on what's possible, and sometimes it hides things that I don't see the filter on this one, but when we work with blueprints, you can't find it. Can you share screenshot what you got up right now? We can see if we can diagnose it. Okay, so for your guys' next homework assignment, you need to set all of those things, and you need to do lerping. Okay, so you need to go out there, see magic missile. So basically, you have to have at least one LERP node from noise, so Perlin noise, or any of those other white-black noise things that I was looking at. And you can use that to blend textures together. You can use it to add dirt, like just a flat color, like like here, I'm using this noise texture here, and I'm using that to blend between blue and black, and then that's like the noise layer that is then getting used as the base color, I guess. So based on the white to black here, it's blending between this sort of neon light blue color and black, and by adjusting the noise strength parameter, there's more white or more black, and you'll get more noise or less dirt, or however you want to play with it. So you have to use a LERP node, and you have to create 2 material instances of it with different parameters. Kind of like how here I have horrible. Like here I've got this instance here, and here I've got this instance here. What do I do? turn roughness all the way down, it gets very shiny. Looks almost wet. Turn the roughness up. Oh, what's going on with the lighting here? There's something weird about it. Let's see. So if you want to, I should do it, I think. Yeah. We don't need that. So if you want to split the U and the V coordinates out separately, then let's see, is it 10 now? What is it? Scalar parameter? Yeah, okay. U tiling scale. I'll just call it U tiling. Tiling. So U tiling defaults to 1 with a minimum of 0.1 to 20 maybe. And then V tiling defaults to 1, slider min of, actually let's see. Can we combine this into a new texture plane? 0.1 to 20 as well. Yeah, text coordinates a little weird like that. Most of the time in Unreal Engine, you can take, if you have multiple values, you can break them, mess the individual components, and recombine them. But I think text coordinates don't work that way. So let's try that. Why is this thing all screwed up? So it's like the lighting's like all jacked up on it. Oh, it's because of the normals, the ambient occlusion. That's why. Yeah, that looks like garbage. Okay. Close, and there we go. Okay. Yeah. All right. So on this one, the tiling looks fine, but on this one, it doesn't look good. So I'm gonna sit here and I can play with the horizontal scaling, the vertical scaling separately until I get it to a place where I like it. And so I could probably do the same thing for the paint splatter as well. I'm not gonna bother with it. So you take two parameters, append them. I was thinking about using a vector parameter, but then it would have, yeah, whatever. This way works too. So you've got your U tiling, B tiling. You append them together to make a 2D vector, and then you multiply that by the texture coordinate nodes, and you can thus adjust the value separately. Does that look normal? So let's see. So chamois is lerping between cobblestone and brick, and that's kind of a cool look. And you're so you've got one texture for cobblestone, one texture for brick, and then you've got a lerp node with some noise or something hooked up to it. Chamois, is that what you did? Yeah, it's a cool look. Yeah, so lerps are used all over the place in gaming, like all over the place. And all it is, it's a way of blending between two different things. So for example, like in your car uses lerping on your car's thermostat, right? You've got a thermostat, you can turn it all the way down, or you can turn it all the way up. All the way down for my car is 60 degrees, all the way up is 90 degrees. And so you can think all the way down as being 0, all the way up as being 1. And so as you turn the knob from 0 to 1, it blends from 60 to 90. And so if I set it halfway, it would be 60 plus 90, 150 divided by 2, 75 degrees. So if I turn the knob so it's pointed up, 75 degrees, turn it down a little bit, 72 degrees, turn it down a little more, 68, And so that temperature knob on your car is a lerp. It lerps between 60 and 90, or at least on my car. And it smoothly interpolates between the two of them. In this case, we're blending between two different textures. Chamois has cobblestone and brick, and then it's blending between the two. And which one it uses depends on whether the texture you're using for the lerping is white or black. If it's white, it picks one of them. If it's black, it picks the other one. If it's gray, it'll do a 50-50 or whatever shade of gray it is. Do you guys kind of understand that? Like, lerping is a pretty important concept in game development. You want to play with it? You got to do this by tonight, so make sure you understand it. Okay. All right. And so, yeah, basically what you do is, for simple things like roughness, you just right-click and choose promote to material, promote to parameter. And then after you've created a material with all these different parameters on it, You can close out, right click on it, choose create material instance, and then that'll allow you to make a completely different version of the texture. We got one that's metal here with some red paint splatter. You know what, I probably should do the, yeah, all right. I'll make it look good, I guess. This whole texture is not really designed to look good, but whatever. Okay. You know, maybe I'll just use the same scaling for both of them. See how that works. Nah. I'm actually gonna do this. So I'm actually gonna use the scaling for the bricks, and then I'm going to multiply that by the paint texture scaling, and that way we can have smaller, bigger paint splatters. But it's going to keep the proportional scaling from the bricks. So I think that, yeah, there we go. Okay. So by scaling it via the bricks, they're not weirdly distorted like they were. And then we can come up into here and paint texture scaling. And so we can kind of come in here and control this separately. But it's actually, it's getting the right proportions, at least from the bricks. And like I said before, like I'd probably want to have a better tiling splatter system, because anytime the human eye is drawn to patterns like this, and so this looks very unnatural, right? Like this looks pretty garbage. So I'm just gonna leave it like that because that's a little less obnoxious. But really, what you want to do is you want to get textures that were made for tiling, like that will they don't have any detectable patterns in them. Kind of like what we saw here with the gold. You notice how there's no like detectable patterns in the gold, and they do that by doing a LERP node with noise, and they have it at high frequency, medium frequency, and low frequency, so that when you zoom all the way in, you don't see anything. You don't see any repeating patterns. You zoom out, you zoom out, you zoom out, and there's still no repeating patterns anywhere on it. And so with our little paint splots here, they don't look very good, but for small scale stuff like this, it's vaguely acceptable. Okay, so that is your homework to make a more advanced material with parameters in it, and then create a couple of material instances, and yeah. So does text chord, parameter, multiply, add, subtract. Yeah, let me put it up for you. Yeah, texture coordinate. And then you're going to multiply that by a parameter, and you feed that into the UV node of a texture. Actually, all the textures are going to have the same thing fed into them, so they all scale together. Multiply, add, and subtract, and LERP, symbols. Lerping. So Lerping blends between different things. So create two different textures and blend between them. Yep. And this video will be up on YouTube, so you can review this at your leisure. These things can get kind of complicated too. The button is called Lerping, LERP, linear interpolate. If you hold down L and click, you get a LERP node. And so it blends between A and B, and it uses alpha to choose whether you get A or whether you get B, or mix. So I feed one texture into A, I feed one texture into B, and then I'm using, you can use like a noise texture or something into alpha, and then it will use that noise pattern to choose which one of these two you see. Okay. All right, so let's get into landscaping. You want to save it? Sure, why not? Let's get into landscaping, because landscaping is kind of a fun part of the class. So I'm going to go ahead and take out a couple of these walls here. And the the walls are there, you know, for your safety. What's going on? Did I lose my camera? Okay. Because without the walls, you can just and I'm dead. So, have any of you guys ever fallen out of a world in a video game before? Just out of curiosity, have you guys ever fallen through like a staircase or Bethesda games? Yeah. In Fallout 4, I had to keep getting new companions because my companions they'd be walking with me and they would just fall through the floor. And there's no ability to like teleport them to you or like recover them once they've fallen through the floor. They're just like, I used to cheat to like be like, what's the location of my companion? And they're like 50 feet beneath the ground, you know, or all hanging out in a Fallout shelter together. I don't know. So I had to keep getting new companions because they kept falling through the world. So I'm dead right now, actually, in this game. Like, I can't actually move anymore. I'm dead. And the reason for that is because the world has what's called a kill plane, where if you go too far down, it assumes you've fallen out of the world and it kills you. Now, this is going to be a problem if you actually want to make a valley or something. You're actually going to have to change where the kill plane is. But basically, in most games, you'll fall out through the world, and then once you hit wherever the minimum Z value is, the furthest depth down, then it will do something. Like, it might kill you, like Unreal Engine does by default. A lot of games will teleport you back to a safe place, especially if you're like on a PlayStation game or something like that. Like Sony and Microsoft really don't like it being possible for a player to be stuck in a game. Like, imagine somebody quick saves, you know, when they're falling, right? Like, then they're just dead. Like, you like, unless they've had like a real save, it is a brutal bug to be hit by. So by, you know, a lot of these games, when you hit a certain negative Z, it'll just teleport you back to like some well-known safe point. Now, why do people fall out of a world? Usually it's because collision detection and physics are really hard to do well. So let's say that you're cruising around in the world and you open a door and the door opens through you. All right, how do you handle that? Right, it's like if it's a solid door, you can't walk through doors, right? A lot of games, they have a collision system where like they're like, oh shoot, this person is being interpenetrated with a door, right? Can't have that. And what a lot of them will do is they'll find the nearest open spot. And so if the nearest open spot is below the floor, it puts you there, and then you fall out through the world. And that's a very common algorithm. Like if two things overlap, try to adjust them so they don't overlap anymore. But the nearest spot might be down, you know, and then you fall out through the world, you know. Your kneecap hit a destroyed car in Fallout 4 and you fell through the world, yeah. World of Warcraft had a lot of problems with people falling through the world, and it turned out to be this cool Easter egg because the developers area was actually beneath the world. And so people would go to different parts of the world and fall through the floor. And they would land in these like really trippy like developer zones where like people were building the next levels of World of Warcraft, and like you can find videos of that on YouTube. They play like all this psychedelic music, and the person's just like falling and falling and falling, and then they land and there's like a pirate ship, and like, what the hell is this, you know? And it was areas where they were building new content for the world. It's kind of cool. Yeah, a lot of games you can fall through the world, and that's why that kill plane exists. So let's talk about landscaping. So do you guys all see the button here for modes? We have been playing around in select mode. We are going to now do landscape mode, and I know Aaron knows what I'm talking about here. He's been messing around in landscapes already. And so if you guys click on modes and click on landscape mode, it will put you into landscape mode, and you'll see this beautiful green square grid thing, which looks like it's out of, I don't know, 1980s VR games and things like that. Like, we used to play video games, it just looked like this. Like, this was considered state of the art in the 1980s, you know? Like, you're driving a tank and it's like, pew, 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 pew. Like, they had 3D games back then. They were just, you know, you could count the number of triangles. There's 6 triangles in this tank and 6 triangles in that tank. And, you know, you'd shoot a bullet at each other and, yeah. Vaporware, yeah. Speaking of which, I should set my wallpaper engine for the day. Let's see here. There. There we go. Yeah. Got some vaporwave going on now. Okay, yeah, but this is literally what, you know, video games looked like back in the day, 3D video games. I think we're good with that for now. Yeah, so one of the problems with this landscape tool is that you create these like really ugly looking mountains and things like this that not only don't look very good, but you can see the textures are all like stretched out on them and stuff like that. So there's a better way than what I'm going to show you right now. This is sort of like the melted taffy look of landscaping that I'm about to show you. Okay, I'll just close out this. Save. Okay. So modes, landscape. Okay, you guys are all with me? You're all staring at green thing. Okay. Good. All right. So we're going to pick we'll just leave all this on the default. It's fine. We're going to pick a material. Yeah, whatever. I'll leave it all on default. And then we're just going to pick like a grass texture or something. So click on the little drop down thing here next to the material and just pick like grass. That's a nice inoffensive material. If you want to be like different, you can pick gold or something and have like a golden landscape. But yeah, so you're going to go to landscape mode, click on the material here and just type in grass, and then just leave the rest on the defaults and hit create. And when you do that, you will see that there is now a landscape. And the shadowing is really funny. Like by default, it creates shadows for the grids were. Not exactly sure why they do that. It looks kind of amusing. And now you've got to rebuild the lighting, which I'm not going to do right now. Yeah, that's a grass texture and it's a grass background. And so if you look at it, you can see even when you're zoomed all the way in, like there's a little bit of clover there and stuff. There's no immediate tiling that you can see. And as you zoom out, it still doesn't, like right there, I guess you can see a little bit of tiling. And as you zoom out, you can see that it's still pretty good. Like it doesn't, it's not really immediately obvious that this thing is actually just a tiny little texture. It actually adds noise in just the right ways to kind of disguise the fact that it's a tiled texture. Okay, so after you create your landscape, what you're going to do is you're going to now be in sculpt mode. So there's manage mode, sculpt mode, and paint mode. Sculpt mode allows you to adjust the landscape. So if you just click and drag around like a spray paint tool, you'll see that you can actually create mountains and hills and things like that. They all look kind of garbage in the sense that they're all just like this, like melted taffy kind of landscaping. But you can kind of have some fun with it. You just click and hold, and you can add a little bit of variety to your world. Kind of just kind of spray painting around. The longer you hold in one place, the bigger the mountains get. If you make them really big, again, they're going to look really bad because the mountains don't look like this in real life, A, and B, the textures get really distorted on it. As you can see, they're really stretched out. Okay, so just go ahead and spray paint. You can adjust the strength of the tool. So right here it says strength. So if you click on that, the hills will grow at a faster rate. And you can have different shaped brushes. If you want to add a square, a square mountain using a checkerboard pattern, you can do that. So the areas that are white will go upwards, so you can create some interesting things. Honestly, if you want to make nice mountains, there's people sell like alpha packs that have these that have good spray paint tools for doing landscaping. This is all pretty garbage looking overall, but just go ahead and play with it a little bit. Add a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Maybe I'll import some brushes into it. Yeah. So that's the sculpting tool. I'll put it back onto just circle. Circle gives you nice, not nice, but unoffensive thing. Okay. You can choose what kind of fall off it has. Does it have a square fall off? That kind of stuff. So how harsh the edges are on your things. Okay, then there's the smooth tool, and the smooth tool can be used to smooth out things like that. So if you have any rough edges, you can just come in, just kind of airbrush them away. Gets rid of that really jaggedy, lumpy look. Depends what you're going for, I guess. You just come in here and kind of, clean it up if you want. The strength's a little high. Let's turn the strength down. Maybe a little bit of jaggies is okay. But just come in here and knock the harshest edges off. That looks a little better, I guess. Okay. Flatten does, what it says. You can come in here and make a plateau out of it. So if you want to make a road through the mountains, you can just use the flatten tool, and there you go. You got a road. Ramp does, again, what it says, and you can just do this. Add ramp. And then, so if you want to have like a ramp, leading up from the ground to a plateau, you can do this. Click here. Up there, add ramp, and then it will do that. And so you can make it so the user can walk up to the top of the plateau. Make sure it's not too steep. That might be too steep for the user. Hydro and erosion are two different ways you can simulate weathering on a mountain range. So if you come in here and erode it, you can see that the things will start wearing away. So you can come in and make it a little more realistic looking. Like that. And then hydro simulates water running down the sides of the mountains, and so you can see it's creating these little pock marks and things like that. So it's kind of simulating like where water would fall, right? Noise will add randomness to it. With a strength of 1, it's going to be wild. So it's just randomly adding and subtracting to the landscape. Let's erode this thing away a little bit. There we go. More than a little bit. Strength's really high right now. There you go. Okay. And hydro. We'll carve out little channels between things and stuff like that. Okay, so those are your basic tools for, let's smooth this a little bit. Smooth, turn the strength down a lot. Just going to smooth out a little bit of this over here so it doesn't look quite so bad. Things in nature usually don't have that really, jaggedy look. Usually water comes in, knocks off some of the hard edges. Like these things. Okay. So there's a landscape. I don't know. It's not an especially realistic looking landscape. It looks like you're in a bowl of green, taffy. But it's a landscape. It's a good starting place. I'm going to rebuild the lighting, and then we will talk about it a little bit. So, the landscape. Landscape's got some important limitations on it. The landscape, you can think of it as like a that's low res mode right there. It'll go back to being in high res once the computations are done. A landscape is, you can think of it as like a 2D map. It's actually like, you can almost think of it as like a 2D image, like the splatter blot texture here, where areas that are white are higher elevation, areas that are black are lower elevation, and this whole thing, you can basically think of it as just one giant image. And so when you're spray painting mountains, you're actually literally spray painting white onto a surface, and it's just drawing it as taller and stuff like that. So there's some important limitations of the landscape. For example, you can't make a cave. You can't make a bridge, right? You can do a ramp, but a bridge where you've got a thing like this over a thing like that doesn't work. You can't do that in landscaping. You can add an object to it to build you can put a bridge, mesh over a valley or something, but you can't directly sculpt let's erode this away here. Let's see, sculpt. Oh, by the way, if you hold down Shift, it does inverse. So by default, sculpting. Let's raise the strength a little bit. By default, when you click sculpt, it raises the ground. If you hold down Shift, then it lowers the ground. Okay. So you can make valleys and things like that way. So I can make a nice valley here, but I can't make a bridge using the landscape tool, because the landscape tool is literally 2D. And a lot of games have this limitation in it. If you've ever played Oblivion or Skyrim, when you go up to a cave, there's usually a door, right? And you click on the door and it teleports you to another level to make it seem like you're inside of the mountain. You actually don't have the ability to go underneath the landscape because you can't. There's no holes in it. So what they do is that's funny. So what they do is they'll just like stick a door, like welcome to the bandit's lair or something. Let's lower this a little bit. Let's see. Do we have any doors in here? Content door. So they'll like put a door there or something. They'll like stick that. They'll like stick a door like right up against the side of a mountain or something, And then when you click on it, it's like, all right, you're inside of the, and they'll usually have like something else to disguise the fact that, let's see, rock. Like a rock like this. We're gonna do some Bethesda up in here. All right. That. And then we'll push the rock up against the mountainside, and then we'll push this up against the rock. And then we'll add a light. Turn down the camera speed. And they typically just have like one of these things set up with like kind of a rocky overhang or whatever. And then you just, let's change the color of this. Spooky, there we go. All right. Yeah, good enough. Yeah, and so basically they use the same like cave entrance over and over again. And they just basically have each door, when you click on it, it teleports you into a cave. Oh, actually, that would actually work pretty well, I think. Yeah, that would actually work even better. All right, let's do this. It's a nice flat surface. Building lighting here. Yeah, so if I wanted to spend the time on this, which I kind of don't. Something like that. Okay, you guys know what I mean, right? Okay, so now if I want to enter the bandits lair, I just come up here and then I'd hit E. Obviously I haven't coded anything yet. But does this, if any of you guys have played Skyrim or Oblivion or Morrowind, does this kind of look familiar to you? Obviously this door is a little bit too modern here, but you guys know what I'm talking about? Like, you know, because they don't actually have caves, you know, so what they do is they just put like a cave entrance like this, so it looks like it's a cave, and then click on it, teleports you inside. Okay, so the maybe I'll raise the ground here a little bit because that looks a little bad. Okay, so I'm going to switch back into landscaping mode, and I am going to go into sculpt mode, and I'm going to reduce the radius of the sculpting to pretty small, and I'm just going to kind of come up in here and just, nope. Don't want that, but I kind of want just the, I don't want the player to get stuck, you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to just kind of sculpt up, you know, a little bit of the ground so it kind of comes up to the platform here. I'll hit shift, and maybe I'll smooth it out a little bit. Yeah, it looks pretty decent. So if I hit play now, then there's sort of a smooth transition from the platform to the world. Obviously, I'd probably want to do something different with this platform, or I could just delete it, honestly, at this point. So when you're in landscape mode, you can't delete things, right? And so that's why it's really important to understand that there's this modes. Todd Hardhouse asking you to jump to Dev 2. It's funny. I'm good. so you can't actually select anything when you're in landscape mode. So you have to go into select mode, and then maybe I'll try deleting this and see what that looks like. Nah, I'll just leave it. I don't want to have to mess around with it. Yeah, so there you go. So that's that, and then maybe next time we can talk about how to make this, take you to the bandits lair or something like that. You guys understand for today? So we went over materials, material parameters, and creating a master material and child materials, I guess they're called, parent-child class materials, whatever. I guess. Oh, that's cool. I think these are from that new pack that we downloaded, right? Like that free nature pack or whatever. So if I play, you can see there's that. Yeah, there's a landscape. Looks a little bit more like a real game now, huh? Still not professional per se. Like the mountains are very much, like that probably should be smoothed out. I need to get some Bethesda horses up in here so I can walk right up the cliffside. But it's not bad. It's not a bad start. Okay. So I think your assignment for tomorrow is going to be making a landscape. But I kind of wanted to get into it a little bit today. This looks not too terrible. There's a lot of stuff you can do with sunlight and clouds and fog and stuff like that. And that's a lecture for another day also. They've added some really neat stuff for that too, like time of day and stuff. I think that I want to back in landscaping. I'll just kind of sculpt. Kind of hide the edges there. And smooth it out. Smooth that out as well, because those sharp corners don't look good if it's grass. If it was rock, maybe it was acceptable. With grass, yeah, you don't have sharp grass, Bethesda horse at least an 80-degree max slope. Yeah, I was able to climb to the top of the throat of the world, way before you're supposed to be able to. They have this wind wall that you're not supposed to be able to bypass. But if you just take your horse and just point it up the side of the mountain, you can just go up to the very top. There's some mithril deposits up there too. So you can get quite early in the game. Rebuild the lighting. Because again, every time you do anything, it's going to give you this lighting needs to rebuild thing. It's just annoying with the landscaping, because anytime you sculpt the landscaping, it puts these lines back in there, which really draw the eye. The human eye is really drawn to lines, sharp edges, things like that. Like this doesn't look natural at all, right? Because it's a sharp-edged grass. And then when you redo the lighting, then the edges go away. Okay, so I think that's good for today. Any questions for you guys? Yeah, Bethesda horses are... And to be fair, it was actually kind of fun, it was actually kind of fun to be able to drive your horse right up a cliff, there's something to that. It's a bug, but one of the more enjoyable bugs. My daughter was upset that Cyberpunk, the CD Projekt Red was fixing the bugs in it, because she thought the bugs in Cyberpunk were the funniest thing ever. No, don't fix them. They're the best part of the game. Like you're driving down the city on your motorcycle, and V will just start T-posing. He's just driving, and all of a sudden he's just like this on his motorcycle. Then he's back to driving again. Then he T-poses again. It's like, don't fix it. It's the best part of the game. You make prefabs in Unreal. What do you mean by a prefab? Kind of similar to group of objects, making it easier to copy and paste it. You can group objects together. It's like that and that. If you right click them, you can choose to group them if you like, and then they'll come together with each other and stuff like that. That's what you're talking about. First person template. Go ahead and get rid of that. The stage of history. You don't even know what that's from. IS-50B in 15 minutes. I didn't get the reference. Soul Calibur. Yeah. All right. So I think that's good for today. We will end here. I'll put your homework assignment up on Canvas. I'll put this lecture up on YouTube. I'm going to be going to Big Bear tomorrow, so I'll be lecturing from a different location tomorrow. I have Unreal Engine installed on my laptop and everything, so you shouldn't notice any differences other than the fact that I'll have a mountain behind me instead of a closet. All right, so I'll be there for 3 days, and I'll be back on Friday, and should be good. So based on the feedback, the pacing might be a little slow for you guys. If you want, I can make it go a little faster, but I'm trying not to really overwhelm you guys. IS-50A it's not supposed to be a killer class. You like every day you learn something new about game development, and by the end of the semester you have enough skills to, like with this, there's a lot of incremental progress from yesterday to today, Friday to today. So, keep it up, keep doing the homework, keep visiting every day, and you guys will get to a pretty good level, I think. All right. And and we'll keep talking about games too. So today we talked about Rocksmith and how games can be used for education. I'm part of, I don't know if I can say if I'm part of the beta or not, so I'm not going to say anything about that. But I do think Rocksmith is actually a great example of how games can be used for non-gaming purposes. Like especially during the pandemic, like you can't have a guitar person come to your house and teach you to play guitar, but you've got Rocksmith and you can play it on your PlayStation. It'll teach you how to play the guitar or the bass or the rhythm. Okay. Okay, so that's it for today, guys. Thanks a lot, and I will see you tomorrow.